Sisters and brothers, the session of General Synod is called back to order now. Just so you know, one quick update is some of you are having trouble with the Wi-Fi on rca.org, and we hope that's been resolved. If it's not, please check at the back table and let them know. Mr. General Secretary, would you please give us an overview of today's schedule?
Thank you, Mr. President. Buenos días, Sínodo General. This morning, the rest of this morning, you will hear my report, and I hope you will pay really close attention to what I have to say. We will have also one more opportunity for presentation of new business. Also, we're going to hear from the Board of Benefits and three of the commissions, the report. After lunch, when we come back in the afternoon today, we will hear the report of the President and several more commissions. We're also going to have another time for table discussions. And we're going to act on recommendations that the Committee of Reference will be making regarding items of new business. After dinner today in the evening, we'll hear an update from the restructuring team. That is what we have for today, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. General Secretary. And also I want to extend a special word of thanks to the body for being here this morning and honoring our AABC Commission for their leadership and worship for us this morning, and remind you that tomorrow morning, same time, our CPAM group will lead us in worship as we gather together the CPAM Commission. So at this time, I invite the General Secretary to please deliver your report to us. Eddie?
I'm going to use this microphone here. Dear delegates of the General Synod 2022, the Lord be with you. It is an honor for me to share my report with you this morning. If my report to you today were a sermon, I would title my sermon From Lament to Hope. Hope is a beautiful thing, and it is what helps us carry the heaviest burdens of life. Biblical hope is not only the desire for something good to happen, it is the confident expectation that it will happen. Hope is holding on to the promises of God, that He will be with us to the ends of the age. Friends, we cannot live in this life without hope. Hope is necessary for us to continue to move forward. But we cannot hope without lamenting first. We cannot ignore the need to lament. We come to hope through lament. And this is so true for us today in the world that we're living today and in the Reformed Church in America. As you all know, our beloved denomination is going through one of the most challenging seasons of its life. This is not the first challenging season, and I'm sure it won't be the last. This is one more bump on the road, and this is what we're going through right now. Throughout the course of our almost 400 years of history, as a denominational family, we have gone through many difficult times, and we have been able to come to the other side stronger, and this time is not the exception. By God's grace, we will be able to come to the other side stronger and healthier. I can see it. My question to you is, can you see it? I have said it many times, and in different contexts, that the first half of this decade, the decade of the 20s, is going to be tough because we are reorganizing, restructuring, and redefining our ministry. These are major organizational changes, and change is difficult and painful. Change is hard. And usually people are not afraid of change because change is good, is healthy, is necessary, but they are afraid of loss. And when change takes place, loss become a reality. Loss become a reality. And we're experiencing that now. As a denomination, we must lament all of the loss we're currently experiencing and will continue to experience in the next couple of years. But the second half of this decade is going to be great, and I can see that. I can see the church of 2030. I can see it now. The decade of the 20s is early, is young. We're only in 2022, but I can see the church of 2030. The second half of this decade will be amazing. God has been at work in the past, and we have seen it. As a pastor, as a minister myself, I have seen God at work. I am a witness of the great things that God does in our ministries. And I believe that we will continue to see him at work again and again and again in the future of the Reformed Church in America. Last October, in response to the Vision 2020 team's report, General Synod formed a team to develop a restructuring plan for the denomination for sustained spiritual and organizational health. A month ago, the restructuring team had its first in-person meeting, and let me tell you, it was a great time of prayer, connection, and friendship, discernment, and also connecting. You will hear an update from several members of the team this evening. So I encourage you to come back to this place after dinner because you're going to hear a great report from the team. It's not a secret to anyone that our denomination, that's as a denomination, we are walking through a dark time, and we need to lament that reality. We need to lament that reality. We must not only recognize the need for lament, but also we need to practice the discipline of lament both within and beyond the walls of our churches. We need to lament because of the reality we are experiencing in the world today. We continue to deal with the devastating impact of a global pandemic. We are not post-COVID-19 yet. We're going through the global pandemic, and we need to lament the devastating impact that we have seen and we continue to see not only in society but in our churches, in our congregations, and we need to lament that. We continue to experience social and racial injustice in North America, and this is a sad reality that we continue to see in many different places. We continue to witness the senseless death of young and old people in places that are supposed to be the safest places, like schools and churches, shopping centers. We need to lament because of what we are experiencing in our beloved denomination. We are seeing RCA churches leaving our family to form their own networks or to join other denominational families, and we need to lament that. We are seeing regional synods, classes, and local congregations discerning if it is time to leave the denomination or to stay. In the last year, I have met with a lot of classes, regional synods, and congregations and consistories, trying to help them understand that we are not dying, that we have a great future for us, and we need to lament that the process that these churches are going through today. In my role as General Secretary of this denomination, I am lamenting the loss of important staff members who have accepted other calls to serve in other ministries, including Reverend Jill Versteg and Pastor Elisa Cortez Bass. Two key members of our team have moved on to serve other places. We need to lament because the past 3 years have been extremely difficult. Since General Synod in October of last year, of 2021, 68 churches have left the denomination, 68. And another 4 churches have closed. An additional 60 churches, classes, an additional 60 churches have filed a petition to withdraw and are still in the process of leaving the denomination. Some churches, classes, and regions are still discerning whether to stay or to go. My friends, this hurts. Sometimes it's personal. When a church we have served as pastors, a church we have grown up in, a church where we taught Sunday school or visited family members or friends, a church where we do any of these things currently and just in the past, when we see them having these conversations and finally leaving, this hurts. Separation has not always been as generous in spirit as it has been generous in resources. This too hurts. It hurts when people who are leaving vilify those people that are staying. It hurts. It hurts when they make disparaging comments about the denomination that we love. It is painful, my friends. But it goes both ways. And we who are staying also have slashed out many times. At times, I need to remind myself to be generous in spirit, and I need to confess my anger and disappointment and judgment, and instead I commit myself to prayer. I pray with RCA pastors every Friday, and that is the highlight of my week, because that's a group that I can confess and share, and we pray together. We need to lament the hurt that we have caused each other. And it's important for us as a denomination to pay attention to that. We need to lament that. We need to lament the loss of each other. We need to lament not living up to General Synod's vision of a mutually generous separation. And we need to recommit ourselves to a generosity of spirit. And my invitation to the Reformed Church in America is to recommit ourselves to that generous spirit. We lament the misinformation that is circulating about the Reformed Church in America. We lament the loss of identity for people for whom that was important, but whose church has left the denomination. We lament the loss of stability. We lament the collateral damage of these decisions, friction within congregations, attention deflected from mission and ministry, strained and broken relationships. We lament the divisions that we could not overcome. We lament all of that. When I think about all of this, Psalm 13 comes to my mind. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord, my God. Give lights to my eyes, and I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. This sounds like a journal entry, doesn't it? This psalm sounds familiar to many of us that have gone through the darkest days of our lives. This psalm is a beautiful example of going from lament to hope. In the first two verses, the psalmist asks a set of painful questions to God that clearly describe the pain and sorrow of his heart. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear the pain in my soul and sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Notice the recurring phrase, how long? How long? As in, when will this be over? Or when will you relieve me from my grief and agony? What is happening to David is unpleasant. It's hard. He wants to be done with it. And so he asks, how long? How many questions have we had that? How many times have we had that questions? I have asked that questions many times in my journey of life, especially during my time serving as the General Secretary of the Reformed Church in America. He addresses these questions to the Lord. It's a desperate, miserable plea to the Lord to intervene for him. I believe this is a great example for us to follow as a denomination. We need to cry out to the Lord in a similar fashion. The situations we are going through are troubling. They are not enjoyable. They are causing us grief, pain, and anguish. We need to cry out to the Lord and ask him, how long, Lord, how long? It is not a sin for us to express our deep grief about the situation we are going through that is hurtful and frightening. Verses 3 and 4 of the same psalm include David's humble petition to the Lord. Consider and answer me, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. In these two verses, David gives a request and then reasons why the Lord should answer him. He starts by asking God to consider and answer his request. He wants God to look at him and be mindful of him. But he won't settle for just a look. He wants an answer from God. His request to God is to give light to his eyes. He's asking God, Lord, give light to my eyes, open my eyes. In essence, what David is saying, I know there is a solution to my problem. I just need you, Lord, to open my eyes so that I can see it. I know there is a solution to my problems. I just need your help in opening my eyes so that I can see it. And this reminds me of another person from the Bible who was in a hopeless situation. You remember Genesis, Hagar, Sarah's slave who had given birth to Ishmael. She had been sent away from Abraham's home. She and her son were alone in the desert with no more food or water. At that point, Hagar resolved that she and her son, it was better for them to die. She walked away from her son so that she could not see him when he died. An angel of the Lord appeared to her and told her that God has heard her son's cries and that they both would live. And the Bible tells us, then God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. Genesis 21:19. Hagar and her son were saved that day. Notice that Scripture doesn't say that God miraculously created a well with water, The well had been there all along. Only Hagar could not see it. And it's only when God opened her eyes that she could see the solution to her problem, that the solution was right there in front of her. Sometimes when we're feeling hopeless, stressed, or afraid, we lack the vision to see how we can help ourselves. When we are going through all of that painful situation, we lack the vision to see what God has in store for us. Sometimes we can be feeling great and still lack the ability to see what is best for us, what is best for us, what is best for our denomination. At times we must turn to God and pray as David prayed, God, open my eyes, give light to my eyes. And many times we have to lift out a prayer to God like that. I have been praying that prayer myself, that God will open our eyes and illuminate our soul so that we can see the path that we need to follow to find our salvation. And then when our eyes are open, we too will joyfully sing, my heart rejoices in your salvation, in verse 5. And that's my prayer for the beloved Reformed Church in America. We need God to open our eyes wide and for us to see what he's doing in our midst. Finally, in verses 5 and 6, we can see the beautiful affirmation of hope. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. You know, hope removes all fears and allows us to see the wonderful acts of God. Hope allows us to trust in God's steadfast love, and thus we can sing to the Lord and rejoice in his salvation. If I were to rewrite Psalm 13 for us today, it might sound something like this. How long, Lord, will you forget us forever? How long will you hide your face from us? How long more farewells must we endure? How many more drastic change must we write out? How long will the enemy keep us divided? Consider and answer us, O Lord our God. Give light to our eyes. Unless you open our eyes and show us the way, we are doomed, and critics will say they got what they deserve. And our foes will rejoice because we are smaller, because they think we won't make it. But we trust in your steadfast love and believe you have a bright future for us. We rejoice in your salvation. We know you can make a way. We will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with us. For 394 years, through many trials and dangers, he has provided for us abundantly. But friends, even as we lament, there is so much to be hopeful for and to celebrate in the ministry of the Reformed Church in America. And I'd like to share with you several things that God is doing through the work of the Reformed Church in America. So let me start with transforming. Reasons for hope start with the progress that we're seeing through the work of transforming. The RCA's 15-year strategic initiative to equip RCA congregations in discipleship, leadership, and mission. You will hear other reasons to celebrate for hope later this week, with reports from RCA Global Mission and also a report from RCA Church Multiplication. I will not include any of that in my report. JP from Global Missions and Randy will be sharing that from Church Multiplication. We have made a significant progress in many important areas of the ministry of transforming this year. And these are some of the highlights. Disability Concerns is looking to young leaders to lead us into the future, marked by discipleship, servanthood, and equip-based hospitality. They are working to particularly identify and invest disability advocates age 30 and younger. One way they are doing this is by leading the disability advocacy journey in partnership with Next Generation Engagement. The disability journey is an 8-month virtual experience for young people in their 20s to study disability rights movement in North America and apply their own advocacy skills community-based initiative. This experience has elevated the passion of young leaders and equipped them for advocacy work. 10 young people have been selected to develop grant-funded projects toward advocacy and work. If you have any questions about disability concerns, you can connect with our dear friend Terry DeYoung, and he will give you a lot of more information about that. More than 10 women are enrolled in the She is Called cohorts with New Brunswick at New Brunswick Theological Seminary certificate program in church leadership and theological studies, exploring their callings to become preaching elders in their church, commission pastors, or go farther in their ministry studies, or simply become better equipped with leaders. I was at the graduation of New Brunswick Theological Seminary, and I was glad to celebrate with some of these women that have gone through the process. In early 2022, our first generation Spark group launched with 10 participating congregations. Generation Spark partners with youth mentors and with their congregations to equip young people for ministry. So also speaking about partnerships with the CRC, the RCA and CRC Disability Concerns also released an updated and expanded 3rd edition of the Inclusion book last summer, entitled Everybody Belongs, Serving Together. So this is another great resource for churches, and also you can connect with Terry DeYoung if you have more questions about that. As pandemic concerns curtail and continue to curtail in-person events, Reverend Liz Testa from the Women's Transformation and Leadership team has also continued to create sacred space to foster community and combat isolation, including small groups, book studies, retreats, and prayer gatherings. You can connect also with Liz Testa about that. The Lavish Hope podcast now is in its 3rd season. I hope you have had some of those wonderful stories from that podcast about women in ministry and stories of transformation. So I encourage you to pay attention to that and to listen to some of those podcasts. Also, 2 cohorts allowed ministry leaders to journey together and hone their leadership skills to solo pastors and senior pastors. Another cohort helped leaders flourish change and disruption. So these are some of the areas of leadership development in the work of the leadership development. So the local mission engagement, another team from Transforming helped launch and develop new local mission practices in the midst of a global pandemic. They provided tools like prayer walking guide, help churches understand their community through mission insight demographic analysis, and also coach pastors and consistories. Beginning in the summer of 2021, the Next Generation Engagement also began partnership with 5 young leaders, elevating their voices on faithword.org as regular content contributors on issues pertaining to finances, environment, and spiritual formation, and more. I encourage you to visit our website and check, faithword.org, and you will see the connection of many of these young leaders writing different articles to help and equip the local church. A second volume of the popular She is Called Women of the Bible study series have been released on the RCA store on Faithword. Volume 2 takes biblical women's stories deeper, coming from Reformed perspective. And it is great to see and to hear stories of other people using these resources, not only in North America, but in different parts of Europe. Other denominations and groups are using the resources that the Chief Called Women of the Bible Study are using in different places. And lastly, let me just make one more highlights in my report here. In early 2023, the Next Generation Engagement will launch the first online course for children's ministry leaders. And I encourage you, if you have a children's ministry leader, I encourage you to have your church, your leader, connect with Anna Radcliffe from the RCA to inquire more about this important resource for children ministry in the local congregation. I need to mention some shift on transforming. Because of the reality that we are living today in the RCA. Our transforming staff, actually when I joined the denominational staff, I was hired to be the director for leadership development. That's how I joined the Reformed Church in America 8 years ago, in 2014. So I joined to lead one of the areas of transforming. And so the transforming team staff has been large, has been perhaps one of the largest staff teams that we had over the years to really get, the work that we were assigned by General Synod in 2012, 2013. But given the reality that we're living today, so we are trying to make some changes and restructuring because we can no longer have, 20 people on that team. The reality that we're living today is different, is challenging, is hard. So that team has shrunk. So this year, the GSC staff work around transforming, experienced multiple shifts that continue to shape and reshape its identity within the Reformed Church in America. On top of the challenges and impact of COVID-19 and the impact of decisions made at General Synod 2021, the way we have been structuring our work around transforming has been reviewed as part of the organizational plan that I have with the denominational staff. As part of the ongoing transforming vision mandate by General Synod, as well as my commitment to give an answer to the reality that we are living today, I asked Reverend Sang Kim to initiate a new integrated vision for equipping in 2022 and beyond. We are in the midst of internal structural shift to honor both the spirit and goals of transforming, while also embracing the Spirit's movement towards a new global future for the Reformed Church in America. Sang is working right now closely with the church multiplication and the global mission team to house a new center for leadership and mission. This center will offer training for discipleship, leadership, and local mission engagement. As well, this will be will offer a holistic discipleship work for church planting locally and around the world. The center will also house disability concerns and next generation engagement. During the pandemic, we realized that we could do a better job of responding and listening and working alongside churches and leaders. The need for an additional Sabbath in mental health resources and ministries, the need for training on adaptive leadership and innovative processes, the pain of the mid-pandemic challenges, the desire for advocacy opportunities and venues to deal with racism, the fear of churches not being able to sustain themselves and remain open beyond the pandemic, and the need for resources and for next generation work had led us to retool and rework the work of transforming to answer to all of the needs that I just mentioned. We are committed to develop a nimble and responsive way for transforming team to provide quality services for both the present and the future of the Reformed Church. Part of that retooling will be greater partnership with regional synods, with classes and classes leaders, reorganizing and supporting the work of God that is already that God is already doing through and the regions of the classes in the Reformed Church in America. So during this season of challenge, of change and restructuring, and with a smaller ministry staff, we need to be creative and we need to be strategic. We no longer can continue to do things like we have always done. Bringing the ministry staff together in a new center is an effort to respond with creativity to the current reality we are facing as a denomination. The center will train the head, the heart, and the hands of leaders and strengthen the soul of our churches. So we will continue to work with transforming, but it will be done differently. We no longer have the staff that we used to have. Now it's a smaller staff, and we need to be creative in doing the work, in accomplishing the work that we are asked to accomplish. So the training and learning opportunities offered to churches and ministry leaders will empower them for greater discipleship, mission, and leadership, as we have done in the past, whether for long-established congregations, and I want you to hear that from me, the importance of our long-established congregations in the Reformed Church in America is critical. I have been in different meetings, in classes and regions, and one of the questions that I always, that I'm asked all the time is, what about our churches? What about our small churches? What about us that are staying in the Reformed Church in America? So I want to say this today in my report, the floor of the General Synod. I want you to hear that. The importance of those long-established congregations in the future of the Reformed Church in America. We need to work together, and our staff is going to support the work that many of our churches are doing. We have churches that are 300 years old, 350 years old, churches, that are 200 years old, churches that are in cities and churches that are in small rural communities, small and big, mid-sized. We need to work together, and the work of the center will be focusing not only, with new church plans or churches, about the future, but we will work hard to equip these long-established congregations of the Reformed Church in America. We cannot go into the future without paying attention and blessing and supporting and working with those long-established congregations, churches in the Reformed Church in America. So I want you to be clear about that, and I want you to hear that from me. You will be hearing more about the center, maybe not today, but sometime later. And we will give some information about that later. Now I'd like to share with you some new ministry opportunities that God is allowing me to have and allow us to have in the last couple of years, in the midst of a challenging season, in the midst of difficult conversations. God is giving us a beautiful light, and for me, I see this as God opening my own eyes to see what is He up to as we continue to move into the future. In my role, I have been in many difficult conversations, many difficult meetings. I receive a lot of emails that many times are just painful, because serving in the position that I serve, you have, some people that don't like what you're doing, and they are, they tell you. I remember, when I became General Secretary, I called the two previous General Secretaries of the Reformed Church just to give me some advice. So I met with Tom, and I had a good dinner with him. He prayed for me, he blessed me, and then I met with Wes, and I remember Wes always telling me, Eddie, don't forget, some people will want you to be the secretary, okay? And some people will want you to be the general. And you have those two in your name. So I always remember that. So some people just want to see me as a secretary, and they are like so mad with me when I do things that they're not happy. So I say, God bless them. So in the 2-3 years that I have served in this position, there are so many days that have been hard and difficult for me, but there are so many beautiful things. And I can say, I choose to focus. Where do you choose to focus in life? On the bad or on the good? I think it is important to focus on the good. So this past year, I had the wonderful opportunity to connect with leaders from different parts of the world who would like to have a closer connection with the Reformed Church in America. All of these are Macedonian calls. You remember in Paul's missionary journey, Paul was planning to go somewhere else, and the Spirit said, no, you're not going there, you're going here. And he had dreams, and it's beautiful to read the book of Acts, because in the book of Acts you hear a lot of stories of how God worked. And one day he had a dream, and there was a guy from Macedonia, in his dream, and said, come and help us. Well, I wasn't planning to go to Macedonia. That's not what we do, but there is this Macedonian call that is inviting us to come and to connect. So let me show you a picture from Nicaragua. This is Nicaragua. I met with a group of leaders. That was in December of 2021. I went with Reverend Andres Serrano, the coordinator for Latino ministries in the Reformed Church, and also he's a strategist for church multiplication. So we met with a group of about 40 leaders who are seeking our help to establish an equipping center to train pastors and church planters. It was a beautiful thing for me, because I was born in Nicaragua, so I'm from Nicaragua. And it was great to see some of these leaders that I have never met before calling us and inviting us to help them, because they have seen, the work. And it is unbelievable that in the midst of a difficult season that we're living today here in North America, and churches asking to deciding to move on and to leave because we are dying. Many people in the world, they are looking at us and they are saying, you have something really important to give. You have been in global mission for more than 300 years, and we need your help. So I had the blessing to meet in Nicaragua with a group of leaders. This other picture is from Buenos Aires, Argentina. So in February, I had the opportunity to respond to this other Macedonian call in Argentina, and I joined Reverend Fabio Sosa from the Classes of Central Plains, and also with Pastor Andres. We went to Buenos Aires. This picture here is from Buenos Aires. The other picture, that one is from Mendoza, Argentina. The other one, in that trip we went to Buenos Aires, Mendoza, that one is from Montevideo in Uruguay. And that one is from Santiago in Chile. So we had a wonderful opportunity to connect with many of these leaders that are doing great ministry, and they are connecting with us. And many of these leaders are connected with Reformed Church in America pastors. So, and this is the beautiful thing. This is like, okay, we're walking into new territory. This is uncharted territory. We didn't know that. We're not trying to do any of that. We're just responding to the invitation that God is giving us from many of these churches. And these pastors are pastor from Florida, pastor from Texas, Reformed Church in America pastor, ordained minister of Word and Sacrament. They have connections around the world. And what is attracting many of these new leaders is our theology, Reformed theology. In my meetings, the only thing I shared with them, it was the 5 solas, the 5 solas of the Reformation. Sola Scriptura, solo Cristo, sola fide, sola gracia, soli Deo glory, solo la gloria de Dios. I did not preach anything new or anything fancy. I just explained, the 5 solas of the Reformation, and it was great to see that. I am also amazed to see a pastor from the Clases de las Naciones teaching the Heidelberg Catechism to more than 300 people on Saturday morning, because they really value our creeds and confessions, our Reformed understanding of Scripture. God is doing an amazing thing in the Reformed Church in America. So now we're trying to work together and see how do we respond. Historically, we don't have RCA churches around the globe. We have RCA churches in Canada and the USA. But now, what do we do now? So that's where we are. I ask you to help us to pray, because we're in the process of discernment, because we have pastors in Sarasota who have sites in Guatemala City and Colombia, and that's their church. They have one site in Sarasota, Florida, another one in Guatemala City, and another one in Medellin, Colombia. So that's where we are right now. So I ask you to help us to pray and to discern how do we continue to do these Macedonian calls and to respond to these Macedonian calls and invitations. So I'm almost ready to end my report. I just want to give you some encouragement to you. This spring, I have traveled a lot. If you are a friend of mine on Facebook, I like to take pictures. I like to check in to different places so that you can help me to pray. And if you have noticed, I have traveled a lot in this spring. And I thank God for the visits I have been able to make to Reformed Church in America churches. I believe this is a really important time for connection. And I have been able to do that across the denomination. I have had a wonderful visit with leaders that are committed to the Reformed Church in America long term. From Washington to New York, from Iowa to California, from Florida to Ontario, Canada to New Jersey. These visits have encouraged me, and during this season, and have given me the opportunity to receive encouragement. I have been preaching in many different churches. This summer, the month of August and September, I'll be preaching every Sunday. I'm not a local pastor, but I had the opportunity to connect with a lot of our churches, so I have been able to do that. And I'm really encouraged to meet, with Clases leaders, with regional synod leaders. Some people ask me, okay, Eddie, what's your agenda? Where are you coming? I say, well, I don't have any agenda. My only agenda is just to say hi and to pray for you and ask you to pray for me, because of the process that we're living. So I had that wonderful opportunity. Later this year, I will also be in many different places, and I'm encouraged, by that, and to see what God is doing. So Reformed Church in America, churches and leaders, I ask you to explore new ways of doing ministry in your communities, in the communities that God have called you to serve. My request is for you to explore new ways. Don't be afraid of trying new things. Don't be afraid to be open to what God might be doing in your communities. Please watch this video as a beautiful example of transformational ministry in the community.
So the Boulevard Church started with a nudge from the Spirit and a dream. I was telling everybody and anybody about this dream about planting a church in West Michigan, and everyone was like, there doesn't need to be another church in West Michigan, specifically Holland. We just started to listen. We gathered some of our close friends. We started to pray intentionally about what the Lord was calling us into. And all of a sudden, the Lord nudged my heart and said, you need to go talk to Pastor Jonathan, who at the time lived literally right across the street from our house. So I went over there and said, hey, the Lord is stirring in me that I was called to plant a church, and it might be here in Holland, Michigan, wondering if we could have a conversation.
Ben moved into the neighborhood. I got to know Ben, and since we shared the same heart, he said, I want to plant a church. I said, there's already a church here. Eventually, I sensed that his call was genuine, invited him to join the staff at Fourth Reformed Church. For a while, we tried to combine.
I don't want to say the rest is history, because there was a lot of work that happened and a lot of conversation and a lot of prayer that happened from that point on. But the Lord used kind of that act of obedience, I think, not only on my part, but on Jonathan's part, to have conversations, and here we are.
The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 3:6 says, I planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase. I hope that's a description of Fourth Reformed Church over the years, founded in 1896. I will say that in the 11 years that Jeanette and I have spent pastoring this congregation, we've been deeply blessed and greatly encouraged by all the ways that God has worked. Fourth, from all accounts, has always been a neighborhood church. And maybe that was our strength, and maybe also led to some of the challenges which led to our eventual closing. If 1 Corinthians 3:6 describes Fourth's life, I hope that John 12, verses 23 and 24 describe her death. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a seed, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. What if a church has fought the good fight and finished the race and kept the faith? Why not hand off the baton to another congregation? For Jesus, his death and resurrection resulted in more and more faithful followers. Maybe that's a good definition for what the death of a church and the raising of a new church might produce.
We discovered that actually church attendance in Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, versus church attendance in West Michigan per capita was a lot greater, if you could imagine that. And so we know that church planting is the best way to reach people who either aren't engaged in their relationship with Jesus or aren't engaged in a local church. And so we landed on planting a church in West Michigan. And the process of getting off the ground was, we couldn't pay people to come to gatherings. We couldn't pray people to come to gatherings. Nobody would come, but somehow, some way, the Lord just kept grabbing people's hearts around a vision of reaching people with the gospel and creating a diverse space, not only cultural diversity, but ethnic diversity, socioeconomic diversity, and trying to figure out what it means for us to follow in the ways of Jesus. And so in 2018, in October, we launched at the Boys and Girls Club, and we started to have conversations about what it would look like for the Boulevard to take over this building on Washington Boulevard and 15th Street. And that was the beginning of many, many, many hours and many conversations about what that would look like. We felt like the Lord was calling the Boulevard to be an autonomous church plant that would, in fact, have the resources to not only care for our building, but only increase our ministry capacity to reach people with the gospel. And now we've gone through a pandemic, and our church has over doubled in size in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of masks, and in the midst of social unrest. Obviously, God is stirring in people's hearts a new way of following Him, and it's been so fun to see so many young folks coming in, so many families coming in to learn how they can be authentic in their relationship with Jesus, even if that looked different for them many, many years ago.
From the moment I met Ben, I sensed that he and I shared a similar heart for the neighborhood, and that made the transition so much easier. When you share a common mission and some of the same missionaries, it can be a wonderful, and it has been for me, a tremendously satisfying handoff. Every Sunday morning when I walk in here, I just have such joy and appreciation for the fact that God was gracious enough to continue the work here and to see the work flourish. I'm deeply, deeply grateful for the Boulevard and for the chance to now kind of sit in the pew and enjoy seeing what God is doing here.
I think what was valuable about the transition is we didn't have to start from ground zero. Again, we got the opportunity to build on such a rich history here at Fourth Reformed and the ministry that has been done on this corner. But another thing that was valuable is in those months where we were just discerning and curious about what the Lord might be doing in our hearts and through us, Jonathan and I would go on prayer walks together. If you know anything about Jonathan Brownson, you know that he is a prayer warrior. And so he and I would go on walks in the neighborhood, pray, talk, meet new people. Just the fact that I had somebody to go on a walk and talk about my fears and talk about the poor decisions that I had made and maybe the direction that maybe the Boulevard might be going was such a gift in the midst of a transition. I think none of us can do ministry, none of us can do life alone, and without those mentors pouring into us, that gives us the fuel to then pour into others. I think one of the things we are celebrating here at the Boulevard Church is that we have a group of millennials and Gen Zers that are just passionate about following Jesus. This looks in many ways engaging in their passions around social justice. This looks like engaging their passions around healthy rhythms of taking care of their spiritual selves, but also their mental and emotional selves. This looks like having honest conversations about our doubts.
Ephesians 4:1 says that we ought to lead lives worthy of the calling to which we have been called. Ben was called to plant a new church. I was called to pastor an aging congregation. What is God calling you to do?
Friends, this is one example of one of our churches going from lament and death to resurrection and hope. This is the transformation story of Fourth Reformed Church, becoming the Boulevard Church in Holland. I give thanks to my friends Jonathan Brownson and Ben Aguilera for sharing this beautiful story with us today. I believe this is a great example of transformation that the Reformed Church in America is going through right now. And we're in the midst of that. We're in the midst of experiencing death in many different ways, to see and experiencing new life and hope about the future. A hope that is multi-ethnic, multi-racial, a future that is multi-generational, a future that includes doing ministry with people in every walks of life, a future that involves us to listen to the gospel, a future that looks more like Jesus. If you read the Gospels, Jesus always hung out with the wrong people. Just read the Gospels. You know, Jesus, why are you having dinner with a tax collector? You're not supposed to do that. You are the Son of God. You're not supposed to walk and enter into the house of a tax collector. Why, Jesus, are you talking to a woman from Samaria? You're a Jewish male. You're not supposed to have a conversation with her. Why are you talking to her? Jesus allowing that woman, that prostitute, to cry and bend and to cry on his feet, and with her tears washing his feet. And people were saying, well, if this were the Son of God, he would know who that woman is. I am praying for a future of the Reformed Church in America that will look more like Jesus' ministry. I am praying for a church, for a future that will look more like the kingdom of heaven, where people from many nations, many tongues and different races will worship together the Lord God in Revelation 7:9. That's the future that we're looking for, that I'm hoping for. And I invite churches and leaders of the Reformed Church in America to start trying new things, new ways. Don't be afraid of the new things that God is doing, and embrace the work that God is inviting us to follow. So, dear friends of the Reformed Church, God is up to something great in our future. Keep the faith, keep lamenting, and keep hoping. Mr. President, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. General Secretary. There are always two times for us to bring new business before the Synod, and this will be the second. And microphone 2.
James Brum, Synod of the Mid-Atlantics. Until I heard the General Secretary's report, I thought I worked at the Reformed Church Center, but now I'm not so sure, because he announced it moved. But I would like to move that we commend the General Secretary's report to all classes and consistories.
Okay, is that in writing?
It will be in 4
Okay,
seconds.
thank you, James. And we will, I think we can, James, we can pick that up. There's going to be an item of new business, so it'll be time to come back up and receive your motion. Right. So I'm going to again invite the body for new business. Joshua, it looks like you have something. Microphone 1 first, and then microphone 2.
Yeah, Mr. President, Joshua Scheid, Commission on Church Order. I wonder if James is thinking that motion is germane to the report that was just given.
I'm assuming that his motion will be to the report.
Right.
And I'm just going to let it, since doesn't have it writing yet. I'm just going to put it right after the new business.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're on the same track.
understand.
I'm not thinking of it as new business. Okay. So, microphone 2.
Chuck Swoboda, I'm Minister Delegate, Classes Cascades, and I'm bringing an item of new business. I believe they have it in the back.
It's on,
Okay.
Can we bring it up on the screen? There we go.
To direct the General Secretary of the Reformed Church in America to sign the open letter to state lawmakers from America's pro-life organizations by June 30th, 2022. I believe this qualifies for new business for a couple of reasons. The letter wasn't published until May 12th of 2022, and that letter was written because of the leak of a draft of the U.S. Supreme Court opinion that appears to show a majority of the court may be in favor of reversing Roe v. Wade, and that leak did not happen until May 2nd. And so for those reasons, I think it qualifies for new business that could not have been brought by other means to the agenda of General Synod. And just very briefly, I believe the letter is consistent with previous General General Synod statements on abortion, which emphasizes both pro-life positions and compassion to women with unplanned pregnancies. And it's an opportunity for us to add our voice with over 70 pro-life organizations to state lawmakers about what the pro-life position would and would not like to see legislated in the case of Roe v. Wade being overturned.
So that will be given to the Committee on Reference, which will be meeting, by the way, at 11:30 this morning. And there's some signs that show your way up the stairs and around, so General Synod Council will be on notice that there will be a Committee of Reference meeting today for the 3 items of new business. Does anyone else have an item of new business? I would like to invite Mr. Brum back to the microphone for a follow-on to the President's report. Thank you, James. Microphone 2.
I sent the email. We'll see how RCA.org is doing this morning. Yay! So I move it.
Okay, there's a motion that we commend the General Secretary's report to all classes and consistories. Is there a second to that motion? It's supported. Do we have great debate, discussion? I'm going to take a risk on a voice vote on this one. Leave your clickers in your pocket. But all in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Say no. Very good. Thank you, James. Thank you, body, for flowing with our things. Microphone 1.
Mr. President, Gordon Weers, Mahalan Classes. I just wonder, the delegate who just made the new business, is there a way to get the content of that letter? Is that appropriate to share, or even just to repeat the name so that delegates could be looking at that in case that comes up as business?
Gordon, I heard you ask for the content of that letter. Chuck, is that available either by a link?
Thank you.
Microphone 2, sorry.
So yeah, Chuck Swoboda, Minister Delegate, Classes Cascades. It's called an open letter to state lawmakers by pro-life organizations. I did attach it to the email in case it does get approved for new business. But if you were to Google that, you can find it very easily. Open letter to state lawmakers from pro-life organizations.
Okay, is that enough, Gordon, do you think? Okay. Any other questions? Let me just double check with my chief organizer here. Do we feel comfortable, Liz, time-wise? Okay, we're good. We're just kind of trying to make sure. We didn't want to turn you loose and promise coffee and not have it ready yet. And we're quite confident it is ready now. So we're going to take a break right now, and we will reconvene at 10:30, get a couple extra minutes with Bob's report. So we are adjourned for coffee. Coffee is upstairs. It's down here on the floor, main floor. Sorry, and there is some upstairs and outside as well.